Well, greetings everyone, and welcome to a very special online event today. It's called Sacred Laughter and Interfaith Mysticism, a spiritual path to expand your awareness and honor the sacredness of life. My name is Stephen Dinan, and I'm the founder and president of the Shift Network. And today's theme really brings a smile to my face because so often the greatest mystics are the most joyful and bubbling over with laughter. There's a deep enjoyment of life that is the fruit of a spiritual path. And today we're going to explore this more in depth with a really beautiful mystical pioneer and teacher. His name is Imam Jamal Rahman. He is an author, speaker, and co-founder of the Interfaith Community Sanctuary, has deep roots in Sufism, and we are going to explore some really exciting terrain today with him. So Jamal, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you so much, Stephen. I'm honored and delighted to be here.
Great. We're going to dive in, and I want to let everyone know that we are going to have a brand new program with Jamal coming up called Laughing with the Divine Through Interspirituality. So we'll share more about that towards the end of the hour if you want to go further and really weave some of the teachings today into a more joyful spiritual practice. So, Jamal, I'd love for us to begin a little bit with your backstory as a mystical explorer and interfaith pioneer, and just what propelled you to where you are on the path.
Well, Stephen, thank you so much for this opportunity. I would say there are a few uh, powerful life circumstances that really made me what is called a spiritual seeker. The first one is actually quite tragic. The death of my parents. My mother died in 1991, and in 20 days, my father died of a heart attack, really of a broken heart.
Hmm.
But what that did, Stephen, is it awakened me, to the mysteries of life, to all those existential questions. Uh, why am I here? Where did I come from? Where am I going? You might say I went from a knowledge of the tongue to knowledge of the heart in those matters.
It's a nice distinction.
Yes, and that's a Sufi phrase, by the way, from mystical Islam. I would say the second life-changing circumstance, Stephen, was, I was teaching classes on spirituality, sort of ad hoc, part-time, but I made it a full-time life career. I've had some training with my parents, with some teachers in Islamic mysticism, and my father was a diplomat posted in Iran and Turkey, and that gave me exposure to the wonderful teachings of Hafiz and Rumi, using their lens to understand the Quran. But what I wanted to say was these classes took off, they blossomed, they flourished, and made a wonderful community. I think that was the blessings for my parents. The third wonderful, I would say, life-changing circumstance was we grew so large in 5 years, programs in different people's homes, retreats, classes, Sunday services. We needed a center. To cut a long story short, this is the place I'm in. This is a church building, a historical site that was given to us for free. So our knees are scraped with gratitude for this wonderful place. The last thing I wanted to say was, after 9/11, another life-changing circumstance, a terrible tragedy of 9/11, but I bonded with a rabbi and a pastor. We became friends. We became known as the Interfaith Amigos. We started doing programs, and national media in print and TV got hold of us. And we've had 250 programs in all over America, overseas also. And we talk about inclusivity. All religions are all religions really, they lead to the same source. And we have to have spiritual practices to overcome the phenomenal problems of our time. That's the end of my sermon, Stephen.
Beautiful. What a beautiful background. Thank you for that interfaith work around the world, the Interfaith Amigos. I want to ask a little bit about your experience of the relationship between the Sufi path and the interpretation of Islam, because in some ways they're kind of they're not identical currents, and oftentimes people have a more of a a love for the poetry of Rumi or a deep appreciation for Hafiz, and sometimes then they have a little bit like, oh, I don't know about Islam. But I'd love for you to just share a little bit about that perspective of how this is kind of a portal into a deeper relationship with this really important mystical stream that is, the core of spiritual life for much of our planet.
That's a very good question, Stephen, because there's a big misunderstanding. People think in a mistaken way that Sufism is a denomination within Islam, like, Sunni, Shia, like in Christianity, Catholics, Protestants. No, Sufism is simply a heartfelt aspiration to live the spirit of the tradition,
Mm,
rather than get too much engaged, lost in theological disputes.
mm,
So, for example, Ruby says, when you get involved, stuck in these theological debates and, fightings, it's like a bird that ties a snare and knot around its leg and unties it, makes the knot even more complicated and unties it, again makes it even more complicated and unties it to show off its strange skill, forgetting the point is to escape. So Sufism offers a way to really, if you want to use the word of liberation, like the Eastern tradition use, moksha, liberation, to become liberated, to really become a wonderful human being to the best of your ability, to evolve in the fullness of your being and be of service to God's creation.
mm. Let's talk a little bit about some of those flavors of realization, because I know every tradition has slightly different flavors, and one of the things that really comes through in so much of the Sufi lineage is this ecstatic, beloved relationship with the divine. And I'd love for you to speak a little bit about why that heart-centered, more ecstatic relational component is very central to the tradition.
There's a wonderful, it's called Hadith Qudsi. The Prophet Muhammad in a dream, he heard God say, divinity is telling humanity, oh beloved one, I cannot be contained in the space of the earth. I cannot be contained in the space of the heavens, but I can be contained in the space of the loving heart. So there's a lot of emphasis in Sufism on really connecting with the heart, loving the heart, doing programs, events, rituals. For example, the whirling dervish. I don't know if you've seen the Rumi's whirling dervish. That's really not a performance, it's a prayer where one hand goes out, meaning, oh God, all I have is from you, and the other hand goes down. May I offer this to humanity? And they twirl and whirl around their heart, meaning the key is to open up the heart. God is inside the heart. And of course, God is outside of you. Also, God is outside of you, inside of you. So let me purify my heart, cleanse my heart, open my heart, and also be of authentic service to God's creation.
I want to ask about some of the lightness in Sufism as well. So many of the teaching stories are quite funny, or there's this kind of a lighthearted way of sort of working with our ego and attachments and different ways. I'd love to share a little bit about that perspective and why it's actually can be quite effective as a way to free ourselves.
You mentioned Hafiz, the 14th century Hafiz says, what is this love and laughter bubbling up from within me? He said, listen to my answer. It's the sound of a soul waking up.
Hmm.
And therefore, in Islamic mysticism, there's a wonderful character, a 13th century fictional character named Mullah Nasruddin. Through his humorous stories, many truths are conveyed that help us look at our own foibles of the ego and help us to overcome them. So we get closer and closer to our divine spark. Can I give you an example of a story?
Yes, I'd love to have a story or two.
So there's a story of the Mullah Nasruddin. He goes to work, opens his lunch pail box. What does he find? A cheese sandwich. The second day, third day, fourth day, it's always a lousy cheese sandwich. On the 10th day, I'm getting sick and tired of this lousy cheese sandwich. So his puzzled coworker said, Mullah, why don't you ask your wife, be persuasive, to make you a different kind of sandwich? I'm not married. Who makes them? I do. So we meditate on that. I am so upset about something happening. I blame this, I blame that. I forget to look within myself. For example, I remember I make a lot of talks, speeches about, the abuses that corporations are doing, banks are doing. But Brother Jamal, where do you bank? The same banks that I'm criticizing, I also have accounts with them. So I've got to look within myself also in my patterns of behavior. So there are lots of mullah stories. I wrote a book on that called Sacred Laughter of the Sufis.
Mm. Well, I love that. And it strikes me as it's so one of the hard things for people to do shadow work or look at sides of themselves is this sense of shame around things. And so the laughter actually seems like it's good medicine because it just kind of holds all of our human foibles a little more lightly.
Absolutely. If I may give you one more story, if I could, is it all right?
Yes.
The Prophet Muhammad was asked, what do you feel is the greatest reason for the downfall of humanity? And he said, arrogance, pride. So here's a wonderful story of the mullah. On a moonlit night, the moon is shining, he's on his constitutional walk. He happens to come to a well. He looks inside and is horrified because the moon has fallen into the well. Oh, Sister Moon, fear not, I'll help you. He rushes home, gets a rope, has a hook. He flings it inside. It catches something. He heaves and pulls. Something comes loose, and he falls on his back and sees the moon restored to its proper domain. And he says, thank God I came along. That's the ego of, the ego pride that we have.
That's hilarious. Yeah. And it's great to kind of see it in that lens because then it's like it brings home how ridiculous it is that we take pride in so many things that are really not due to us.
Yes.
Beautiful. Well, so there's the Nasruddin kind of lineage, and maybe share a little bit about how does that translate into practice? Like there's the hearing of stories that make us laugh at the human foibles. How do you sort of like cultivate more of that as a sort of a day-to-day practice?
Well, you have to ponder on that. You see, that's a very good point you're bringing up. There's a technique in Sufism called hal and maqam. Hal means you focus on a story or a phrase, it stirs something up in you, and then you go deeper into it. How does it apply to your life? And then put that into practice. And when you put it into practice, it creates a deep change within you. That is why this technique of reflecting, meditating, pondering on poetry or stories, different levels of them, if you follow that procedure of reflecting, find out how it splashes in your heart, as they say, how does it resonate within you, and then act on it, it can change your life. That's why there's a wonderful verse from Sufism that says about this technique, once the blush of the beloved graces you, there's no going back to becoming a green apple. So I've got to find from the different levels of the story that strikes me, depending on my level of consciousness, what changes do I have to make inside of me to really become a more evolved human being. So in a humorous way, it reminds me that my personality is nothing more, like the Buddha says, nothing more than a bundle of conditioned reactions to life circumstances. I've got to be aware.
So the laughter of hearing the story sort of it sort of gives you some freedom from the identification with those, and then but you need to translate it into some sort of a practice, or else you'll just kind of go back into the old habits. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Also, it makes you realize that, you see, you are your personality, your ego, but that's just, as I was saying, a bundle of conditioned reactions to life circumstances. That is me, but I'm more than that. I'm also my Christ nature, Buddha nature, Elohim nature, Allah nature, my divine spark. And how do I connect with my divine spark? I do it by slowly transforming my ego from a commanding master into a personal assistant. And that requires, like the Prophet Muhammad said, he was asked, how do you do that? He said two things. One is, know thyself. and you shall know thy sustainer. Like in Christianity, be still and know I am God.
Mm-hmm.
Or the Buddha, or whatever his dying words as he was passing away, be a lamp unto yourself. Work out your salvation with diligence. So getting to know oneself. And then Prophet Muhammad said, once you get to know yourself, preferably in a humorous way, it's just my personality, I'm more than that. Then Prophet Muhammad said, die before you die.
Mm-hmm.
Die to all that is false within you
Mm-hmm.
before you die a physical death. So that's a large part of my work on planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And, we can cry about it or we can laugh about it. We prefer to laugh.
Very true. Now, one of the things you're doing that I love is you're weaving in the references and quotes from different lineages and traditions, very much in the interfaith spirit. I
Oh,
want
yeah.
to just ask, like, as a practice of an interfaith practice of engaging with different traditions, how do you see that that's actually beneficial to creating more freedom or less attachment to the egoic identity that we are?
That famous author, what's his name? Every famous professor asked the same question. He said it's like this. I'm a Muslim, you can look at the Quran from one angle, you learn something. But if you look at the same Quran from different angles by studying other traditions, you have a more complete understanding of your own Quran, which is why we say in our community, interfaith is not about conversion. It is about becoming a more complete, developed human being. So when I study other traditions as a Muslim, it waters my Islamic roots, helps me go deeper into my own tradition, and makes me a more complete, evolved human being.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. And so in some ways you're just gaining more perspective allows you to kind of get to a greater depth in your own lineage. To what extent does it also challenge whatever precepts and understandings you have as well? Does it sometimes like take you out of oh, I've found I'll share from my own experience as growing up in the Christian faith, I kind of went out of that, did a lot of Buddhism, and I've studied a lot of different traditions. And so in some ways, I'm not as fully invested in Christianity now, even though I deeply respect it. So it's sort of like, how much do we sort of reinvest, if you will, in our root lineage versus when we get that wider perspective, just kind of be more embracing of multiple traditions.
I personally, for me, what works is if I'm
Mm-hmm.
rooted in one tradition, but also study other traditions, that works really very, very well. And that is how you have what is called spiritual but not religious. It's not that they left their tradition.
Mm-hmm.
It was when they looked at their own tradition and even other traditions, they found that it was so much focused on the institution of religion, meaning focused mostly on fundraising and recruitment,
Mm-hmm.
and not at the spiritual core. How do I become a more evolved human being? How can I be of more authentic service to God's creation? I and the Interfaith Amigos, I'm a Muslim, a Jew, and a Christian. And as we have become friends, become more vulnerable, more willing to be transparent, and we've realized, my goodness, we have the same institutional problems in our three religions. And what are they? Exclusivity. Mine is slightly superior to yours, if only you listen to me. Number two, there's so much violence in each of our traditions. Number three, unequal status of women. And number four, homophobia. So this made us realize that what people are really rebelling against is not their religion and leaving one and going to the other. They're really rebelling against too much focused on these institutional issues. I said fundraising and recruitment, but not taking care of these main four problems I mentioned.
I like that.
So everything goes astray.
So if we're to sort of turn away from the institutional concerns and just to the direct, unmediated access to God, to the divine, to the beloved, um, Sure, just love you to share a little bit more about some of the practices that Sufism offers within the interfaith panoply that really complement what we might find elsewhere as well.
Well, Sufism is very universal. That is why it is so much accepted. So a very common one is silence, just silence. Uh, there's no such thing as a Muslim silence or a Christian silence or a Buddhist silence. It's just silence. So, like in every tradition, Sufism puts a lot of emphasis on just go into meditation. Rumi has some wonderful quotations about that. He says, what is silence? Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the absence of the little self. I, me. And his very famous one is, silence is the language of God. Everything else is a poor translation. But that's a universal practice. In Sufism, as also other traditions, a lot of emphasis on what is called compassionate self-witnessing. As Prophet Muhammad said, know thyself, and you shall know thy sustainer. As I mentioned, die before you die. The work of really observing oneself with mercy, with compassion for oneself. But then the Quran says there's more. You've got to do practices to purify your heart. The Quran says when you have a negative thought, evil thought, you engage in evil behavior, it creates a rust on the heart. This is the Quran. And Prophet Muhammad said, for every rust, there is a polish. And the polish for the rust of the heart is remembrance of God, using God's solvents to cleanse the heart, patience, forgiveness, generosity. Because what can you offer God? Simply a polished heart, so God's face is reflected on it. The Quran goes on, and that's part of Sufi practice also. You also have to open your heart. What does that mean? Well, one primary meaning is embrace, Brother Jamal, not only your 10,000 joys of life, but also your 10,000 sorrows of life. Allow your heart to break open. Don't run towards pain and suffering. Just don't run away from it. And if you do that, you create an inner spaciousness of the heart. So much more space for love, joy, generosity to flow inside of you.
So poetic the way you're describing the activation of the heart. And I know you wanted to guide us in a practice around the heart. So I think this would be a great time to do that.
Okay. Then shall we both participate in that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. If you gently close your eyes and then focus on the nostril and simply be present with the breath as we inhale and as we exhale. And now let go of this. And this time, please focus on the lowest part of our spine, the sacrum area, the first chakra. Chakra simply means a wheel-like opening. Focusing on that, it activates it. And then from the base of the spine, please make an intention to send a beautiful cord of divine light from the base of the spine going down, way down, deep, deep, deep into Mother Earth, connecting us to the womb of Mother Earth. Feeling bonded, connected, a sense of belonging. Please feel that as we connect to the womb of Mother Earth. Letting go of that. Focusing now on the crown of the head. And from there, making an intention again to send a beautiful cord of divine light, any color, going up, way up, higher, higher, even higher, piercing those mysterious realms and connecting us to the heart of heaven, feeling bonded with the realms of mystery. And now, letting go of that. And this time, please focus on the heart, the physical heart, an amazing organ. If it's possible, if it works for you, put your hand over your heart, if it works for you, and feel the heartbeat. And then through the heart, please listen to this wonderful revelation that came to the Prophet Muhammad in a dream, where divinity, spirit, God, goddess tells us, beloved one, says spirit, I cannot be contained in the space of the earth. I cannot be contained in the space of the heavens, but I can be contained in the space of the pure, loving heart. Becoming aware that divine heart is inside human heart. Spirit is outside of us and also inside of us, inside our human heart. The space of the heart is actually infinite, boundless. Just be with that mystery for a few moments. And now the Sufis say, this is a wonderful time to say some words of beauty, of empowerment, of healing, by focusing on the infinite space of the heart where divinity resides, and say, I love you. Unabashedly, no matter how awkward it might feel initially, I love you. Or, you are loved, whatever feels right to you. I love you. Or you are loved. But repeat it again and again and again and again. I love you. You are loved. As we keep saying those beautiful words, the Quran says, to spirit belong the most beautiful names. A divine vibration filled with love, blessings, healing is going from the tongue into the mouth, into the throat, deep into the chest, even deeper, into the heart, even deeper, into the hidden, and then into the hidden of the hidden, amazingly loving us, blessing us, healing us, transforming us. Just become very still, stop saying anything at all. And just before coming into awareness, I'll do a Sufi chant. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Number one, slowly coming into awareness. Number two, feeling the shower of blessings, divine blessings, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Number three, coming into awareness even more, becoming aware that we are the beloved of the beloved. All is perfectly well, no matter how it seems. And number five, at our convenience, ever so gently, opening the eyes. Thank you.
I love that. Beautiful meditation. Thank you, Jamal.
Well, thank you, Stephen.
I love the sort of the tenderness of the way you were just, I love you, and just relating to ourselves as the beloved, and that we are the beloved of the beloved, just to, as a reminder, because we can be very, I think, on a spiritual path, sometimes just too harsh on ourselves too.
Absolutely. You know, Stephen, I must tell you, I know sometimes I do therapy, less these days than before. I'm more busy these days with presentations, but the technique that has worked the best, no matter what the dysfunction, even as difficult as heroin addiction, which is very difficult to overcome, but possible, this technique of telling the heart, I love you, and really meaning it, getting over one's shyness or the awkwardness, I've been told again and again, yields the best results. Because it's all about, life is all about loving, being loved, not being loved, and yearning to be loved. Which is why, Sufi mystic Rumi says, love is in every religion, but love has no religion.
That's beautiful. And I think love it just permeates the words of Rumi and Hafiz and so many of the great Sufi poets. They're very ecstatic in their love and
Yes.
proclamations of love.
And they practice it. That's what makes it very beautiful.
Something that was coming up with Andrew Harvey, I just spent some time with, is that that people may not know as much about is this. This is also like men loving other men in a way of sacred brotherhood. It's something that is like, I think it's not as much as part of the Western consciousness, but you see it with, Rumi and Shams, and there's like this kind of this devotional sort of male reflection that's a good antidote to a lot of what is in the West, which is a very competitive male culture in which it's harder to bless and love and honor other men as well. I wonder if you could speak to that.
Well, just a few words. In Sufism, it's called kinship of spirit. It doesn't matter who you are. If there is a kinship of spirit, a heart-to-heart connection, that is what creates that bonding. So, we talk about community, but a lot of our community is tribal. But what if I find that as a Muslim, I find a Christian or a Jew or a Hindu or a Wiccan or spiritual but not religious? I don't have the same theological beliefs, but there is a kinship of spirit. And it's hard to describe, but you can feel it. And that is what is brotherhood or sisterhood, but a human connection, the heart-to-heart feeling.
I like that phrase, kinship of spirit.
Yes.
One of the things that we said we were going to talk a little bit about today was about cultivating the spirit of gratitude, which is it's a heart-centered quality as well. Let's share a little bit about that from a Sufi perspective and how we can cultivate gratitude as a practice.
Yes. Well, the Quran says that everything on heaven and earth is extolling the limitless glory of God. And so when we praise God and thank God, we are joining a cosmic chorus and we feel uplifted, exalted. Now, of course, what's more important is, Brother Jamal, that's nice, practicing gratitude, but can you practice gratitude in times of affliction, times of difficulties? So here's a mullah story, if I may tell you another mullah story. The mullah has lost his donkey. The entire, that's a big deal in our part of the world, source of livelihood, companion. The entire village tries to find the donkey. They cannot find the donkey. They come to give Mullah the bad news that his donkey is lost forever. And where's the donkey? He's in the town square on his knees saying, Allah, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so grateful, I'm so grateful. Mullah, you haven't heard the bad news. Your donkey is lost forever. So I know, but I'm so grateful because imagine what could have happened to me if I was on the donkey. So this is story. Doesn't matter what the circumstances are. I can find some blessing that is going to really help me evolve. In fact, that is the main teaching of Desmond Tutu and Dalai Lama in the Book of Joy, that suffering is inevitable. It's a world of opposites. But the way I respond to my suffering, find some blessing in it. It has to come from within me. That shapes my character and sculpts the destiny of my life. The way I reframe my affliction, my pain, my suffering. Is there something I can be grateful for? It has to, as I say, not be told by somebody outside, but to emerge from within me.
Yeah, that's a good distinction. So, because we're like, you need to be grateful. That doesn't tend to work. It's more like, how could I be grateful? How could I be grateful for this? And find something to be grateful for. Do you find that in terms of navigating, there's a lot of collective tumult, polarization, chaos, like in the collective right now? How are you finding that spirit of gratitude in relationship to, current cultural challenges as well?
Tell me what you mean by that. I didn't quite understand the question.
Oh, just, we have a very tumultuous landscape right now, politically, socially. There's a lot of polarization in America in particular. I'm just wondering, like, how are you bringing that spirit of gratitude and cultivating the more unity in that context?
Well, that besides gratitude, it's also about higher awareness. See, if I meet somebody who's adversarial, and my ministry is really to deal with those who are Islamophobic, anti-Semitic, against this, against that. So I am grateful for one insight, that I'm upset at their behavior. Their behavior is unacceptable, but I'm not against their being, their divine spark, Christ nature, Buddha nature, Elohim nature. That wonderful mystic Kabir, 15th century from India, he gave this advice. He said, when you meet somebody adversarial, do what is right. Protect yourself. Don't allow yourself to be abused. Take the right action and be grateful for taking the right action. But as you take the right action, I beg you, I implore you, do not keep this person's essence, being, divine spark out of your heart. And just this differentiation, discernment in my mind and heart has the power to shift heaven and earth.
That's a beautiful, beautiful reminder, and definitely a call for all of us to put that into action. Made me think of like when we visited Ram Dass while he was still alive. He had a picture of Donald Trump on his altar that said, "Who could not have compassion for this soul?" And it was definitely made it a daily practice.
Yes, yes.
Beautiful.
And he's suffering also.
Yes, absolutely. All souls are suffering through their own karmas and background, and it's all seeking towards a liberation as well.
Yes.
I wonder if you can just share a little bit more about, just tapping into your own reservoir of wisdom. There's this balance between taking inspiration and guidance and alignment from our traditions, but then also finding our own wellspring that is the wisdom from within as well. And so the balance between respecting scholarship and tradition and finding that direct knowing in ourselves.
Yes. Prophet Muhammad has asked this question, and he would say that listen to all the authorities, all the famous sayings, the pundits, but then consult your heart. Consult your heart to know that there is a wonderful inner teacher within yourself. And I can connect with that, especially if I keep doing the work of purifying my heart, cleansing my heart, engaging in life experiences, being of service. Then I begin to acquire a knowledge that is beyond book learning. Islamic mystics, they talk about this. Rumi, for example, says there is book learning, but there's another kind of knowledge you can use for your guidance, which is beyond book learning. He says, have you not noticed that birds, they know how to make nests. Spiders know how to make webs. Beavers, they make dam. Bees collect nectar. Did they go to graduate school? Did they consult a pundit? How did they get that knowledge? So there is that other kind of knowledge, which mystics will say, it is within you. You connect with it. It's really about consulting your heart, but it becomes more of essence, has a deeper meaning, more precious, if I'm also doing the work of purifying, cleansing, and connecting with the other and being of service.
I love that. Well, it's really clear that you take these deep mystical truths and put them into practice in your life in beautiful ways. So I want to spend some time talking about your upcoming course. It's a really beautiful opportunity to learn from you, to receive practices, initiations into Sufi understandings, and to really put more of these wisdom principles into action. So we're really blessed that Jamal has agreed to teach a brand new program for Shift. It's called Laughing with the Divine Through Interspirituality. Transcend suffering using interfaith mysticism to cultivate passion and purpose. You can find it at the URL interfaithmysticism.com, interfaithmysticism.com. This is a 7-week program. There are no prerequisites, and it's really open to whatever tradition or non-tradition you happen to situate yourself in. It's really about that finding that higher common ground, that deep reverence and joyful laughter with life that is the hallmark of so much spiritual realization. So Jamal, I'd love for you to share a little bit about some of your intentions for what people will come away with, and we can go through the modules about what you'll be leading people through.
Essentially, Stephen, I would say the primary intention is to fulfill the purpose of life, which is to become a more evolved human being, to evolve into the fullness of my being. And the other one is to be of authentic service to God's creation. To know that in the trials and tribulations of life, ups and downs of life, in all the things I do as a student, as the Hindus, they make the classification, as a householder, as a forest dweller, meditating on what is life about, as a sannyasin, a holy person, I'm really either ennobling my soul or diminishing my soul every moment. So this course is really about how can I become a more complete, developed human being, given the suffering in life, the opposites of life, the joys of life. How can I embrace them all and become a more perfected human being and be of authentic service to God's creation so I fulfill my purpose? And service is, again, a matter of extraordinary joy. I'm a Bengali, this wonderful poet named Tagore, who said, I slept and dreamt life was joy. I awoke and found life was service. I served and lo, service was joy.
So module 1 is called Understand How Your Perceptions of Suffering Shape Your World and Begin to Heal and Reframe Them.
That's a very good point. You see, as I mentioned earlier, the way I respond to my suffering, which is inevitable, is a world of opposites, is going to sculpt my character and the destiny of my life. This I learned very early on and has stood me in great stead, how to approach suffering.
Module 2, transform your ego into the flow of presence to reignite your divine spark.
Oh yes, through compassionate self-witnessing, really transform, tame your ego, so it moves from a commanding master into a personal assistant. How do you do that? Lots of wonderful practices, especially, as I keep mentioning, compassionate self-witnessing. And this is in every tradition.
Module 3, rediscover love and compassion as keys to transformation for greater peace, connection, and happiness.
Well, we mentioned love, a saying by Rumi, which is always in my mind. Rumi says, there's no need to seek love, no need to search for love. Just become aware of the obstacles and inhibitions you have put on the way of love. And love is the cause and essence of everything. Compassion, let me just say one wonderful saying by Tagore. If I remember, he says about Well, Prophet Muhammad about compassion said, if compassion was a thing of the created world, there's nothing which could be more beautiful than that. And Tagore says, I love that phrase, not hammer strokes, not hammer strokes, but the gentle dance of the waters sings the pebbles into perfection.
Module 4, purify and open your heart for deeper connection with divinity and contentment.
Cleanse your heart, open your heart. Again, I studied the Quran through Rumi. So Rumi has this wonderful verse about polishing the heart. Jamal, if you get irritated by every rub, how will the mirror of your heart ever be polished? So techniques, practices to polish the heart and to open up the heart. So there's more space for joy and love to flow inside of me.
Module 5, learn to be of authentic service to comfort your soul and invite blessings into your life.
As I said, the traditions say, Jamal, why are you here? You're here to be a lamp, a lifeboat, or a ladder to God's creation. And you'll find that by being of service to God's creation, this will bring you infinite joy and delight.
Module 6, build a community of truth seekers to nurture your inner true self and become comfortable with other perspectives.
So early on in my life, it was drummed into me, Rumi poetry, a wall standing alone is useless. Add to it other walls, it can support a roof, even a granary. Only when ink joins with a pen can the blank paper say something. All the mystics say, no, have you not noted? Even prophets needed companions. We need community.
And Module 7, spiritual meditations and practices to raise your consciousness and support your growth.
If you look at all the problems today, social injustice, planetary degradation, we can have all kinds of legislation, education, but unless we raise our consciousness, overcome our conditioned biases, how shall we overcome social injustice? The biggest problem I find for me is planetary degradation. That wonderful saying which has gone viral. The biggest problem, planetary environmental problems are not loss of biodiversity, climate change, ecosystem collapse. The biggest environmental problems are selfishness, greed, apathy, indifference. We require spiritual practices to overcome all of this.
Well, it's beautifully comprehensive tour of these different facets of a mystical life that's embodied in real practice and real service. So a beautiful offering. Again, it's at interfaithmysticism.com. So I'll share a few other things about this course. There's the 7 90-minute live sessions with Jamal, which are also times to engage interactive practices and live Q&A with him. You'll get recordings of every session, both video and audio, so you can go back and study and review practices together. There's also word-for-word transcripts to work with, study, and highlight. In addition to weekly exercises and practices for home, there's a Facebook community to support you and deepen your experience, as well as small group time to connect with other participants. And on the page, you'll also see a number of extra bonuses, each designed to enhance your journey. There's a PDF chapter of Finding Peace Through Spiritual Practice. This is the actual title of the chapter is Making Spiritual Practice a Way of Life. Jamal, you want to share a little bit about that PDF?
This is really about what I've just mentioned, that unless we raise our consciousness, we'll not be able to solve a problem. We can't meet a problem at the level of the problem. We have to rise above that. We need spiritual practices to overcome the phenomenal social injustices and environmental problems we have.
There's also a second bonus, another PDF chapter from another of Jamal's book called Inequality of Men and Women, the Patriarchal Stranglehold on Power. That sounds intriguing. You want to share a little bit more about that PDF?
I and the Interfaith Amigos, we traveled all over the country. We asked, what is the biggest problem with the institution of religion? One of the biggest one was the inequality of men and women. Women hold half the sky. Unless we overcome our conditioned biases, patriarchal biases, we'll never have peace, equity on planet Earth.
Amen to that.
Yes.
And then there's one final extra bonus that is our special bonus you get if you sign up right away by midnight tonight Pacific time. This is another PDF chapter from Jamal's book, Sacred Laughter of the Sufis. It's called Wisdom for the Inner Journey. You want to share a little bit about that special bonus folks get today?
Yeah, this is really about the wonderful amazing stories of Mullah, that fictional Mullah Nasruddin. Through his humorous stories, so many truths are conveyed, which really is about the fact that, if I quote Hafiz, God wants to see more laughter, more playfulness in your eyes, for that is your greatest witness to God. So through our suffering, our trials, our tribulations, we can find ways of laughing, which is not about mocking, but really about finding some blessing in it, and that brings us joy and laughter.
Well, finding the blessings in everything and finding laughter and joy is really at the heart of a well-lived life. So what a beautiful extra bonus to help and encourage that realization in folks. Well, it's clearly going to be such a beautiful program, and Jamal, your presence just radiates the joy and laughter that you teach. And so we've kept the investment very accessible. It's just 3 payments of $128, or you save 10% when you pay in full with 1 payment of $349. The course is going to start July 16th and run Wednesdays at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. But even if you can't make the live times, you can still get the full value with the recordings, the transcripts, and the community as well. There's some beautiful testimonials on the page from renowned other interfaith mystics like Mirabai Starr and different professors, and also just people who have been so blessed to really learn from and embody the practices and teachings that Jamal offers. So you're in really good hands, and I think you can tell from this time together just what a radiant light he is to be around. So I'm confident you will be blessed if you choose to move forward. Again, it's all at interfaithmysticism.com. And Jamal, anything that's still on your heart that hasn't been shared about with folks who are considering joining you for the course?
No, I just, with such joy in my heart, look forward to seeing all those rectangles of love on Zoom when the course starts.
Rectangles of love. That's a new phrase for us. And I think there's a very deep truth in that
yes.
all come together in a field of love, and we have to be singular in form, but the hearts are what connect us. And so,
Steve, I want to just say, I am sorry, I don't mean to interrupt what you're saying. Please complete what you're saying.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm eager to tell you, this is not my saying. This is a modification of a wonderful verse by Rumi. Rumi didn't write too much. He would just utter, go into trance and utter. So one of his famous utterances is, please come out of the circle of time and enter the circle of love. So I've made that into rectangles of love.
I love that. Well, it's clear you bring out the laughter in me and others, and I know that that's really at the heart of this, all the practices we do. So thank you for offering such a direct path to the divine and to our own beloved relationship with ourselves and the divine. And so you are really a blessing, and I know people will be really blessed if they choose to move forward with you. So again, you can find all the details at interfaithmysticism.com, and you'll get that special bonus when you sign up by midnight tonight, which is the Wisdom for the Inner Journey PDF chapter from the book Sacred Laughter of the Sufis. So thank you so much for a beautiful hour, Jamal. Thank you all for joining. Many blessings, and see many of you in the upcoming course.
Thank you, Brother Stephen, for your graciousness and generosity. Appreciate it very much. Thank you.